Hey friends, welcome back to Fridays with Faye. I think I have been living in grief for a long time and never truly realized it. Because grief doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it quietly settles into the corner of your life, layer by layer, until one day you realize your heart has been carrying far more than you ever acknowledged. And the hard part? Sometimes grief and joy exist in the very same place. I think we often believe if we're grieving, we cannot also have joy. Or if we choose joy, somehow our grief was not real. But I'm learning that both can sit at the same table. I can grieve the body I once had while still thanking God for the breath in my lungs. I can grieve the road my child is walking while still rejoicing over the moments I still get with him. I can grieve losing a close friend while still having joy knowing she is whole in heaven. And I can grieve a dear friend moving away while still thanking God that he placed her in my life at all. But if I'm honest, it is usually the joy I put back on the shelf. The grief gets the loudest voice. The grief gets the most attention. The grief becomes the thing I nurture, replay, and carry. And slowly, without realizing it, sadness starts defining everything. Grief can look so different. It can be grieving the life you thought you would have, legs that worked and full independence, a stomach that could eat without consequences, a body not riddled with pain at 48 years old. Some days I grieve the simple things people would never think twice about. Going somewhere without exhaustion, eating without fear, waking up without pain already waiting for me. It can be grieving the future you pictured for your child. When we adopted our boys 13 years ago, I had dreams and plans for both of them. My oldest, I imagined healing and stability, purpose. I imagined a completely different road than the one we're walking. One of the deepest griefs as a mother is seeing pain coming for your child while realizing there are some battles that you cannot fight for them. You can pray, you can advocate, you fight. You beg God, you carry burdens that nobody else sees. Then there's a grief of fighting systems that were created to help your child, but somehow become the very systems you have to fight against for your child. That grief is hard to explain unless you've lived it. The endless phone calls, the paperwork, the denials, having to convince people your child still needs help, watching policies matter more than people, and feeling unheard while your family is drowning. There's grief in knowing your child is struggling while you're exhausted from trying to keep everyone afloat. And somewhere along the way, you stop noticing how much the fight is hurting you too. Then there is grief from loss. Losing one of my close friends unexpectedly shook me deeply. While I rejoiced knowing she is healed and whole with Jesus, selfishly I miss her terribly. We had plans, more memories to make and more conversations to have. And there's another grief I quietly carried, the grief of a dear friend moving away. A staple in my life, my safe place, the one who pointed me towards Jesus, the one who loved me when I was lost, messy, broken, and searching. Some people become woven into the fabric of your life, and when things change, there's grief in that too. Grief is not always death. Sometimes it's change. Sometimes it's distance. And sometimes it's the loss of what you thought life would look like. And lately, I have wrestled with God through all of it. Why? Why does any of this mean? Why now? Why does it feel like wave after wave? I felt myself becoming swallowed by sadness, but somewhere in the middle of all of that wrestling, God brought me back to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your well-being, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Not the plans Faye made, not the timeline Faye expects, not the future that Faye imagined. Every bit of grief I listed came from expectations and plans I had quietly built in my own heart. And God gently reminded me that He never asked me for my blueprint. He never needed my permission, and He has never once lost control. I realized so much of my grief came because I was trusting Faye more than I was trusting the Creator. That does not mean that grief disappears. It does not mean the pain suddenly makes sense. But it does mean grief does not get to have the final word. That joy still exists here too. It may not be loud joy, it may not be easy joy, but steady joy found in knowing that God still sits on the throne even when life hurts. Friend, maybe you have put your joy on the back shelf too. Maybe grief has become so familiar that you forgot joy is allowed to exist in the middle of a hard season. Please hear me. You don't dishonor your grief by choosing joy. And you do not dishonor God by admitting you're hurting, because even Jesus wept. God is not intimidated by your sadness, your questions, or even your exhaustion. He sits right there with us in it. And maybe that's what I'm learning in this season. Joy and grief can coexist. Pain and purpose can coexist. Heartbreak and hope can coexist. Because friends, I want you to know this. Even when life does not go accordingly to our plans, God's plans are still good. Thank you so much for joining me this Friday. We will see you next Friday. Be blessed.